I never thought I'd wake up in a hospital bed, unable to speak, unable to even scream from the pain, my jaw wired shut after a car accident I barely remembered. But what hurt more wasn't the wires or the bruises, it was realizing that the one person I thought would be by my side, my boyfriend, had disappeared. The nurses told me he'd come once, stood by the door, saw me in the ICU, then left without a word. Days passed, and no one else came. No family, no friends. Just the constant beep of machines and the quiet shuffle of nurses checking on me. I felt small, helpless, trapped inside my own body, wondering what I had done to deserve being left so completely alone. When the hospital bills piled up, I did the only thing I could. I sent them to my boyfriend. After all, we were supposed to be in this together, right? But instead of helping, his mother showed up at the hospital. I'll never forget her face, the way she looked me over like I was something dirty stuck to her shoe. And then she smirked, leaned close, and said words that chilled me deeper than any cold hospital room ever could. "You should have never woken up." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Even if I wanted to scream, to ask her what she meant, I couldn't open my mouth. So I stayed silent. And when she left, a cold, sinking feeling settled in my chest. Something was very, very wrong. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've tried to rebuild my life, one slow step at a time. My jaw has healed, but the emotional scars are fresh. I moved apartments, changed my number, and tried to disappear quietly. But strange things kept happening. I'd hear footsteps outside my door at night. Notes would appear under my windshield wiper. Once, I caught a shadowy figure watching me from across the street. At first, I thought I was imagining things, that maybe the trauma was making me paranoid. But yesterday, everything changed. Yesterday, the police called me with news: my ex-boyfriend's mother had been arrested. For stalking. For months, she'd been following me, tracking my every move, slipping into the corners of my life like a dark shadow I couldn't shake. I sat on the edge of my bed, shaking, heart pounding. Why had she been watching me? What did she want? Was this just about the money, or something deeper, something darker? I don't have the answers yet. All I know is that the woman who once smirked and whispered that I shouldn't have woken up, she's still out there. And something tells me this isn't over. I sat there on my bed for what felt like forever, staring at the phone in my hand. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the police officer's message again, making sure I'd read it right. "She's been arrested for stalking you." It didn't feel real. I remembered every little interaction with her over the past year. At first, she had been polite, if a little cold. When I first started dating her son, Nathan, she would smile thinly at me and ask small, sharp questions. Where did I work? Who were my parents? Did I have plans for the future? I always answered politely, eager to impress. I thought maybe she's just protective. Maybe I could win her over. But now, I saw those memories in a new light. The cold looks. The way she would always make me feel like I didn't belong. The controlling way she treated Nathan, calling him several times a day, questioning where he was and who he was with. I thought he was handling it, that she was just a strong-willed woman. But now, the pieces didn't fit the way I thought they did. I looked around my apartment, suddenly aware of how quiet it was. Too quiet. Every creak of the old pipes, every groan of the walls made me flinch. Had she been outside my window on those nights I'd felt watched? Was she the reason I had to change my locks? Was she the one who had been slipping notes under my door? "You owe us. You ruined everything." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the rush of memories. But they came anyway. The accident. The last fight I had with Nathan. We'd been driving back from dinner, arguing about something small, something stupid. I don't even remember what. But I remember the headlights, the screech of tires, the way the world flipped upside down. When I woke up in the hospital, I expected to see him there. But he was gone. And now, the more I thought about it, the more I wondered, why had he left? Did he just panic? Or did someone tell him to leave? I stood up, pacing the room, heart racing. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone again and scrolled through old photos, old texts. Nathan and I had been happy once, hadn't we? Smiling selfies at the beach, late-night texts about silly things. But looking closer, I saw the cracks. The unanswered messages. The moments when he seemed distracted, pulling away. And always, his mother hovering in the background. My thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock at the door. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I crept to the peephole and peeked out. It was Sarah, my best friend. I let out a shaky breath and opened the door. "Hey," she said softly, stepping inside and pulling me into a hug. "I heard. Are you okay?" I nodded, though the tears were already starting to burn in my eyes. "I'm here now," Sarah whispered. "You're not alone." We sat on the couch, and I poured everything out: the accident, the hospital, the bills, the way Nathan's mother had threatened me, and the strange things that had been happening since. "She's been following you for months?" Sarah asked, eyes wide. "Why? What does she want?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I don't know if it's about money or something else. But I don't think it's just about me. I think Nathan's involved too. Somehow." Sarah looked uneasy. "Do you think they planned the accident?" The thought hit me like a punch. I'd never let myself consider that. But now, sitting here in the dim light of my living room, with everything that had happened, I couldn't help but wonder. Had it really been an accident? Or had someone wanted me out of the way? We sat in silence for a long time. Sarah stayed the night, sleeping on the couch. But even with her there, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound made me jump. I kept thinking about Nathan, about his mother, about the way she looked at me that day in the hospital. The next morning, I decided to visit the police station. I needed answers. I needed to know what they knew. The officer at the front desk was kind, but guarded. "We can't share all the details of an ongoing investigation," he said carefully. "But we can confirm she was arrested for stalking, and she's under a restraining order now." "Do you know why she was following me?" I asked. The officer hesitated. "She claimed she was worried about you. Said you were a danger to yourself. But that doesn't explain the notes, or the surveillance. We're still piecing things together." I left the station feeling more unsettled than before. She thought I was a danger to myself? Or was that just a cover? When I got back home, I found another envelope waiting for me. My heart sank. It had no return address. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, with one sentence written in neat, careful handwriting: "You should have stayed asleep." I felt the blood drain from my face. I called Sarah, my voice shaking. She rushed over, and we sat staring at the note together. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah murmured. "She's in custody." "Who sent this?" That night I barely slept. I kept turning the note over in my hands, wondering if I should go stay with Sarah, or maybe even leave town altogether. But something inside me refused to run. I wanted answers. The next day, I went to Nathan's apartment. I hadn't seen him since before the accident. My heart pounded as I knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, the door cracked open. Nathan stood there, looking tired and older, like the last few months had weighed heavily on him. "Why are you here?" he asked quietly. "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "About your mother. About the accident. About everything." He looked down, rubbing his face. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he stepped aside and let me in. The apartment was dim and messy. Old takeout boxes, clothes on the floor. He sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his hands. "She told me not to see you," Nathan said softly. "She said you wouldn't make it. That it would be easier if I just let go." My chest tightened. "What do you mean? Easier for who?" He looked up at me, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know. I swear, I didn't know she was following you. I didn't know she was doing all this. I sat down across from him, heart racing. Then why? Why leave me there? Why walk away when I needed you? Nathan let out a shaky breath. Because I was scared. She controls everything, always has. She pays for my apartment, my school. She said if I stayed with you, she'd cut me off. The words hit me hard. I didn't know what hurt more, his betrayal or the fact that she had that much power over him. I stood up, wrapping my arms around myself. Nathan, what is she so afraid of? Why go to all this trouble? He shook his head, looking down again. I don't know. But in his voice I heard something else, something he wasn't telling me. Before I could press him further, there was a loud knock at the door. We both froze. Nathan got up slowly, peeking through the peephole. His face went pale. It's her, he whispered. My heart stopped. But she's supposed to be in custody. Nathan backed away from the door, panicked. I don't understand. She's here. We stood in the middle of the room, hearts pounding, as the knocking grew louder. And then, a voice called softly through the door. I know you're in there. Nathan looked at me, eyes wide with fear. This wasn't over. Not even close. Nathan and I stood frozen in his small apartment, our eyes locked on the door as the knocking continued, soft but insistent. His face had gone pale, his breathing shallow. I could feel my own heartbeat pounding in my chest, loud and uneven. How was this possible? She was supposed to be in custody. We had both heard it. The police said she had been arrested. Yet here she was, outside his apartment, her voice calm and cold, calling through the door. Nathan backed away, his hands shaking. She can't be here, he whispered. This isn't happening. I grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back of the apartment. We need to call the police. Now. But before either of us could move, there was a sudden snap, the sound of a key turning in the lock. Nathan's eyes widened in horror. She has a key. The door creaked open slowly. For a split second, I couldn't breathe. Then Nathan yanked me toward the bedroom, pulling me through the narrow hallway as we heard slow footsteps enter the apartment. We locked the bedroom door behind us, both of us panting, and I fumbled for my phone. I tried to dial the police, but my fingers were trembling too hard. Nathan pressed his ear to the door, listening. She's inside, he whispered, voice shaking. What does she want? Why is she here? I finally managed to call the police, whispering into the phone and giving them the address. The operator promised help was on the way, but every second felt like an hour. Outside the door, we could hear her moving around the apartment, humming softly to herself. It was a song I recognized. She used to hum it under her breath when Nathan and I were together, always watching us with that strange, cold look in her eyes. Nathan's hands were in his hair now, tugging anxiously. I don't understand. She was arrested. I thought she was in custody. I squeezed his arm. We'll figure this out. Just stay calm. But the truth was, I was anything but calm. My mind was racing. How had she gotten out? Why had she come here? And most of all, what did she want with me? Suddenly, the footsteps stopped right outside the bedroom door. We held our breath. Then, softly, she spoke. Sweetheart, open the door. Nathan's face twisted in fear. Mom, please. Just go. There was a pause. Then her voice hardened. You were never supposed to let her live, Nathan. My stomach dropped. Nathan stumbled back from the door, his face ashen. What is she talking about? I whispered. He shook his head wildly. I don't know. I don't know. But something deep inside me knew that wasn't the full truth. There was something Nathan wasn't telling me. Minutes passed like years, and then, mercifully, we heard the sirens outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. Nathan cracked open the window and called out to the officers below. Moments later, we heard a loud bang as the front door was forced open, and then shouting as the police stormed the apartment. We waited until one of the officers knocked on the bedroom door, and told us it was safe to come out. When we stepped into the living room, Nathan's mother was being led away in handcuffs, her face perfectly calm, almost serene. As they passed us, she turned her head slightly and smiled at me. "You should have stayed asleep," she whispered. I shuddered. The officer stayed for a while, taking statements, making sure we were okay. Nathan sat on the couch, staring at the floor, silent. I answered as many questions as I could, but I was shaking so badly that one of the officers gently asked if I needed medical attention. I declined. When they finally left, Nathan and I sat together in silence. I turned to him slowly. "Nathan, what did she mean?" He rubbed his hands over his face, letting out a shaky breath. "I don't know. I swear I don't know." But there was a look in his eyes that made me pause. A flicker of guilt. I didn't press him then. I was too exhausted, too shaken. But the question kept circling in my mind: what was he hiding? Over the next few days, Sarah stayed close to me. She helped me pack a bag, insisting I stay at her place for a while. I agreed, though I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter where I went, I wasn't safe. Meanwhile, Nathan tried calling me, texting me. At first, I ignored him. But finally, curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me, and I agreed to meet him at a nearby cafe. When I arrived, Nathan looked like he hadn't slept in days. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, eyes darting nervously around the room. "I have to tell you something," he said quietly. I leaned in. "I'm listening." He hesitated, running a hand through his messy hair. "That night, the night of the accident, she told me to take you on that drive. She was the one who suggested the restaurant, the route home. I didn't think anything of it. But now, I wonder if she planned it." My stomach turned. "I think she wanted you gone," Nathan continued, voice shaking. "I think she was hoping you wouldn't survive." The air seemed to drain from the room. I swallowed hard. "Why?" He shook his head helplessly. "I don't know. She always acted like you were a threat. Like you were pulling me away from her. But this? I didn't think she was capable of this." I sat back, heart pounding. The mystery deepened when Sarah called me later that night, her voice urgent. "I just talked to my cousin, she works at the hospital. She said there's something weird about your medical records." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "She said there were notes in your file, suggesting someone requested a DNR order. But it wasn't you. And it wasn't your family." I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, shaking. Nathan's mother. It all clicked together in a sickening rush. She hadn't just been hoping I wouldn't make it, she'd actively tried to make sure I wouldn't. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the small signs I'd ignored, all the moments that had seemed off but I'd brushed aside. The next morning, Nathan showed up at Sarah's apartment, pale and frantic. "I went through my mom's things," he said, breathing hard. "I found files. Photos. Of you? Of your family. Notes about where you went, who you talked to. She's been watching you for a long time." My head spun. "But why?" I whispered. "Why me?" Nathan looked down, voice cracking. I think it has something to do with my dad." I frowned. "Your dad? I thought he left when you were a kid." Nathan nodded slowly. "That's what she told me. But I found letters. From him. To her. And they mention you." I stared at him, unable to process. "What are you saying?" Nathan took a shaky breath. "I think you're connected to my dad somehow. And she's been trying to erase that connection." The room spun around me. I didn't know what to say, what to think. But one thing was clear, the nightmare wasn't over. It was only just beginning. I could barely keep my hands from shaking as I sat in Sarah's living room, the weight of Nathan's words pressing down on me. My heart raced, my mind running wild, trying to connect the dots. Nathan paced in front of me, his face pale, his fingers tangled in his hair. "She's been hiding this from me my whole life," he whispered. "She told me Dad left, that he didn't care about us. But these letters. His voice cracked as he held up the worn papers. He wanted to be part of my life. And yours. I swallowed hard, trying to breathe through the panic creeping into my chest. But why would she go this far? Why would she want me gone? Nathan's eyes met mine, wide and desperate. I think she was afraid you'd uncover something she didn't want anyone to know. I felt like the walls were closing in. My head was spinning, and my chest felt tight. Nathan's mother had been watching me, stalking me, even after I survived the accident. She wasn't just trying to scare me. She wanted me erased. Sarah, who had been quietly sitting on the edge of the couch, suddenly stood up, her phone in hand. You both need to see this, she said, her voice tight. She showed us a message she just received, from an unknown number. It was a picture of me, taken through Sarah's apartment window. My blood turned to ice. Nathan's face went white. She's here. I jumped up, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Sarah quickly locked the door, her hands shaking. Nathan rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek out. I don't see anyone. But I knew she was out there. Watching. Waiting. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow flickering outside made my heart pound louder. The air was thick with tension, the room filled with a heavy, suffocating silence. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Sarah let out a shaky laugh. It's probably just the wiring. But we all knew better. Nathan grabbed his phone, his voice urgent. I'm calling the police. I clutched Sarah's arm, my entire body trembling. What does she want from me? I whispered. Nathan shook his head, his voice tight. I don't know. But we need to be ready. We heard it then, a soft, deliberate knock at the front door. My breath caught in my throat. Sarah's face strained of color. Nathan's jaw clenched as he stepped toward the door. Stay behind me, he whispered. We could hear the faint sound of breathing on the other side. Slow, measured, patient. Nathan reached for the door handle, his fingers trembling. My heart pounded so loudly I thought I might pass out. Every second stretched painfully long, every breath heavy with fear. And then, just as Nathan's hand brushed the lock, a voice came through the door. Open up, Nathan. It's time to finish this. Nathan froze, his hand hovering near the lock. My chest tightened as I clung to Sarah's arm, both of us holding our breath. That voice, low, cold, unmistakably familiar, sent shivers racing down my spine. Nathan turned, his face pale, his mouth trembling. That's not her, he whispered, eyes darting between me and Sarah. That's my father. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. His father? The man Nathan believed had abandoned him? My pulse hammered in my ears. Nathan had just found letters proving his father wanted to be part of his life, but Nathan's mother had hidden them all these years. And now, here he was, standing on the other side of the door. The knock came again, harder this time. Nathan, open the door, the voice called, more forcefully. We don't have much time. Sarah backed away, her face pale, whispering. What's happening? Nathan shook his head slowly, his eyes wide with confusion. I don't know. He's supposed to be dead. Mom told me he died years ago. I could barely process the words, my mind spinning in panic. What if it's a trap? I whispered. Nathan clenched his fists, staring at the door. Why would he come now, after all this time? Why tonight? The knocking turned into pounding. Nathan! It's not safe. She's coming for all of you, the voice shouted. Sarah let out a soft cry, tears filling her eyes. Who's coming? What does he mean? I felt my knees weaken as dread crept into every inch of my body. Nathan's mother, the woman who had watched me, who had smiled when I survived, who had been arrested for stalking, she wasn't acting alone. There was something bigger, something we didn't understand. Nathan grabbed a chair, wedging it under the door handle. We can't trust this, he said, his voice trembling. We can't trust any of them. Outside, the pounding stopped. Silence fell over the apartment. We stood frozen, waiting, hearts racing, barely daring to breathe. And then, a slip of paper slid under the door. Nathan stared at it, hesitating, before slowly bending down to pick it up. His hands shook as he unfolded the note. I leaned closer, my heart in my throat. His eyes darted across the words, his face draining of all color. "She's not my mother," Nathan whispered. "She never was." The room seemed to tilt, my mind barely able to grasp what I was hearing. Nathan looked up at me, his voice shaking. "The woman who raised me, she's not who I thought she was. And she's not working alone." Outside, we heard footsteps retreating into the night. But the silence didn't bring relief. It brought something worse, the realization that everything we thought we knew was about to shatter. And the real danger hadn't even begun. Nathan's hands trembled as he read the note over and over, his lips moving silently, eyes wide with disbelief. I reached out, gently touching his arm, feeling his body tense under my fingers. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What does it say?" He swallowed hard, then met my gaze. "The woman I thought was my mother, she's been lying all my life. She's part of something bigger, something dangerous. And my real mother," his voice cracked, "my real mother is still alive." My heart skipped a beat. Sarah covered her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. Outside, the street was eerily quiet, the night pressing in on us like a heavy blanket. Suddenly, we heard the sound of keys at the door, not a knock this time, but the slow, deliberate turning of a lock. Nathan leapt back, eyes darting around the room for something to defend us with. I felt my chest tighten, every muscle in my body locking up with fear. The door creaked open. There, standing in the doorway, was a woman I didn't recognize, tall, elegant, with sharp features and eyes that flicked immediately to Nathan. Behind her, the man claiming to be Nathan's father stood silently, his face pale, his jaw clenched. "Nathan," the woman said softly, stepping inside. "I'm your mother." Nathan staggered back, shaking his head in disbelief. "What are you talking about? You're not. I grew up with her, not you." The woman's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "The woman who raised you, she stole you from me when you were a baby. She was never your mother." Sarah let out a sharp breath, clutching my arm. I could feel my heart hammering so hard it hurt. Nathan looked like he might collapse, his whole world unraveling in seconds. "Why now?" he croaked. "Why are you here now?" The man beside her, Nathan's father, stepped forward. "Because she knows you're close to uncovering the truth. She'll do anything to keep you quiet." Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from the back of the apartment, glass shattering, a window breaking. We all whipped around in panic. "She's here," the woman whispered. "We need to leave. Now." But before we could move, the woman Nathan had called Mom, all his life, stepped into the room through the shattered window, her eyes cold, a small smile curling on her lips. "You should have never woken up," she said softly, her gaze locking onto me. I froze, the weight of those words crashing down on me, the same words she'd smirked months ago when I handed her the hospital bill. Nathan's real parents moved to shield him, but she raised her hand calmly. "You think this is about money?" she whispered. "This was never about that. You were just the beginning." My stomach dropped. The room seemed to pulse with tension as she slowly stepped forward. And then, just as the air felt like it would snap in two, she looked at me and said quietly, "You don't know who you really are, do you?" I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat, as Nathan's so-called mother, the woman who had haunted my recovery, who had smirked when I handed her the hospital bill, fixed her sharp eyes on me. Her words echoed in my mind, "You don't know who you really are, do you?" Nathan's real parents stood protectively in front of him, their faces pale, eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen before. Sarah clung to my arm, whispering frantically, "What does she mean? Why you?" I swallowed hard, my mind racing through all the nights I had spent alone in the hospital, the strange phone calls, the feeling of being watched even before Nathan left me. A memory flickered in the back of my mind, something my own mother had once said when I was small: we left that life behind for a reason. Nathan's fake mother took another step forward, her voice low and deliberate. You weren't just some random girl Nathan fell for. You were part of this from the start. I shook my head, backing away, my heart hammering. You're lying, I whispered, but my voice cracked under the weight of doubt. Nathan reached for my hand, his grip tight, his voice trembling. We can figure this out. Together. But the woman smiled coldly, her eyes flicking to Nathan. It's too late for that. Before anyone could react, the real mother lunged forward, grabbing Nathan's hand and pulling him toward the door. Run! She hissed. Chaos erupted. Nathan's father shoved past me, grabbing Sarah and dragging her out. I stumbled after them, my legs barely working, my mind spinning. Behind us, the woman who had pretended to be Nathan's mother didn't chase, she just stood there, smiling softly, as if she had already won. We burst into the night air, gasping, running until we reached the waiting car. Nathan's parents shoved us inside, the engine roaring to life. As we sped away, Nathan clutched my hand, his eyes glassy, his voice shaking. What does she mean, you're part of this? I looked out the window, the dark streets flashing by, a tight knot forming in my chest. I don't know, I whispered. But I need to find out. In the days that followed, the police arrested Nathan's fake mother on charges of stalking, fraud, and abduction. Nathan moved in with his real parents, slowly rebuilding the life that had been stolen from him. Sarah and I stayed close, leaning on each other as we pieced through everything that had happened. But late at night, when I was alone, I would lie awake, replaying her words. I knew this chapter had closed, the hospital bills, the broken trust, the tangled lies, but deep down, I sensed the story wasn't over. Because some part of me now understood, the past I had tried to forget, the life my own mother had left behind, was coming back. And next time, it would be my turn to face the truth.